we have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order.
Good evening, folks. You're listening to the Hour of the Time. I'm William Cooper.
Is against the wall. The chair is against the wall. John has a long mustache. John has a long mustache. It's 12 o'clock, Americans, another day closer to victory. And for all of you out there on or behind the lines, this is your song.
Time, weather, and
Veteran of 3 foreign wars, entrepreneur, and warrior poet, Tony Arterburn takes on the issues facing our country, civilization, and planet. This is the Arterburn radio transmission.
Nothing to see here. Nothing's going on. No, subscribe to Normalcy Bias. That will help. Oh, folks, we got a lot to cover today. This is the Arterburn radio transmission, the official broadcast of the apocalypse. And I'm sorry I've been absent for the past, I guess this is 3 weeks worth of episodes. And I did not intend that. There have been technical difficulties or travel or whatever. And it interrupted my flow. So I'm sorry about that. I won't let that happen again anytime soon. We are back in the saddle. I've got Beans the Brave with me here to protect against bad vibes, woodland creatures, anything that would disturb the transmission. As a matter of fact, this is the last broadcast from my house in Texas. I'm going to be moving over to our new old bank location. Wise Wolf has acquired an old branch bank, and it's still got the drive-through, still got all the cool stuff, the bells and whistles. It's a smaller location, but we've rebranded it. We're going to do Wise Wolf Gold, Silver, Bitcoin. I have a new logo. I'm trying some new things in the face of a lot of economic uncertainty, and the headlines, well, there's a lot to take from them. You know, there's the de-dollarization that's going on. You've got gold hitting its all-time high again, like it's Groundhog Day. You have silver breaking $40 an ounce for the first time since yours truly has been in the precious metals business. Silver is over $40 an ounce, and there's a lot of things, underlying phenomenon that are happening inside of that. If you're a dealer like me and you're watching this really closely, it is strangeness. It's ugly times ugly out there, with the prices ascending, and you have to wonder what is driving that. Like, the average person obviously isn't driving that price. The average small business, the average investor isn't driving the prices of gold and silver right now. Now, these are institutional moves, folks. These are governments. These are central banks. As I mentioned on the David Knight Show earlier today, I'll tell a funny story. I was on the David Knight Show. I'm live. I'm talking to David, and I'd pulled up. I usually do, like, I have about 15 different tabs open, and I'll look at different stories. And I don't know what site it was. It might have been goldprice.org. I don't want to cast aspersions, whatever I was on. And then, like, the computer was hijacked for a moment, and it went over the audio. That's the first time in my broadcasting career that anything like that's ever happened, and I couldn't shut it down. And I rebooted. Everything's fine. But we were talking before I was interrupted by the robot that said it was. They were like, "You have visited a site, and now your computer is hijacked." I was just telling me, I'm like, "No, it's not." It was like boomer bait to get me to click on it and give it all my information. I just X'd out. But I was talking to David about the moves that have happened in silver, okay, and it hasn't caught up to what happened with gold, because gold's always been an out front monetary metal. And you can see from like central banks have, they amassed about this 36,000 tons. So central banks collectively outside of the U.S. Hold more gold than we do. We're supposed to hold about 8,000 plus tons of gold. So that's moved the metric, right? The price of gold has been reflected, and it's almost in real time. You can see it surpassing the euro as the second most held reserve asset this past year. But silver really hasn't done those kind of moves until recently. And I think I'm still going back to this. I really believe whatever that was, that signal when Russia put silver as a strategic reserve asset, that hadn't been done really since the pre-communist Chinese, because that they traded mostly in silver, and countries like Switzerland, who they were the last country to go off of a metallic standard. They had a silver standard for their currency. They ended in 2002. They were the last, but this is really, I think, reset the board. And now you're seeing prices above $40 an ounce. Gold getting close, 35.78, I believe, was the top end. So 3,578 was the top end on gold this past 48 hours, 72 hours for another all-time high. So lots happening there, and these are driven by institutions, folks. This is institutional. Now, yes, people are buying. There's especially different populations around the world, like India. Those are buyers. China, these are people. In the United States, not so much. I mean, there is a small, like if you're subscribed to Wolfpack, and David mentioned this earlier today. David Knight was talking about how that people have gone back through the invoices, and it's basically doubled. If you bought Wolfpack through me in the past couple of years, you're looking really good right now, and I'm proud of that. And we can't. It's not an investment product. We just want you to be protected from things like debasement and inflation. And I feel like we've done a pretty good job with that. And we're just getting started. This is just getting started, folks. I promise you. This is nothing. This is not a top end moment. This is not a bubble. This is history happening, and I want to talk a little bit more about markets today. Let's jump into some headlines. I want to go back. We're in this fourth turning. There's a lot geopolitically going on, and there's so much has happened, especially with I think the psychological fallout from the gaslighting of the Epstein files. A lot has happened. I knew that was a watershed moment. It kind of reset the path. Everything changed at that moment, and they tried to run some other ops. Hey, what's the latest from? Remember how they rolled out Russiagate, and Tulsi Gabbard was going to have all these heads of the James Clapper and Comey. All these people were going to be pulled back into Russiagate, and nothing happened. It's because of what happened in the fallout of Trump saying, what are we still talking about this guy, this creep? Are you still asking about this? And then Pam Bondi with the deer in the headlights. Look, there was a lot that reset everything. However, prior to that, and I knew that was a big moment, was the strike on Iran. And this article just came up in Zero Hedge. Let me put this on the screen. I really want to talk about this because this is something that you wouldn't have seen even 2 years ago. This type of language, and there is something to this, and I want to dig back into this because this has reverberating effects of what happened to the internal political establishment of our country, the perceived political establishment of our country. Let me put this on the screen. This is Zero Hedge. by the way, I don't usually tell people like, I am in pain right now. Like I'm literally it's so ridiculous. I didn't even do anything I was just doing some deadlifts a couple of weeks ago and I slept on my back. And I have a pinched nerve in my hand. It makes it so hard to like just find a place to sit comfortably. And it's just constant and it's annoying. But I know you're like Bill Clinton, you feel my pain. But I'm in pain, right? It's ridiculous. And I didn't even do anything to it. It's like of all the lifts and all the things I've ever done, that was not the one that was supposed to hurt me, but that's how it works, isn't it? All right. This is ZeroHedge.com. Trump bluntly explains that the U.S. bombed Iran for Israel. So, okay. This is a hell of a headline, folks. And there was a lot to that. If you remember that strike, so much happening geopolitically, and we wonder why. I'll get into more of that, but there's definitely a shift going on. I want to get into this. President Trump said in an interview published on Tuesday that no one has done more for the state of Israel than himself, and cited his recent airstrikes on Iranian nuclear facilities as an example. He says, "So Israel is amazing because, I have good support from Israel," the president told the Daily Caller. "Look, nobody has done more for Israel than I have, including the recent attacks with Iran, wiping that thing out. That plane wiped them out like nobody ever saw before." Trump made the comments when asked if he was worried about the growing skepticism among young Republicans when it comes to the U.S. relationship with Israel, and he noted that Israel's lobby control over Congress, saying it has waned in recent years. He says, "But if you go back 20 years, I will tell you, Israel had the strongest lobby in Congress of anybody or any company or corporation or state that I've ever seen. Israel was the strongest. Today, it doesn't seem to have that strength. It's amazing, though," Trump said. "There was a time where you couldn't speak bad. If you wanted to be a politician, you couldn't speak badly. But today you have, AOC +3, and you have all these lunatics, and they've changed," he added. Well, he's not wrong there, but this is a sea change and something that it's in the wind, and you can tell if you're a forecaster of trends at all, if you pay attention. And he was right. When I ran for Congress in 2014, we're talking about a different world than it is now. It's totally different. A lot has happened. So much has transpired. And the younger demographic shift, this isn't going to be the way it was. And there's an unraveling taking place. But this sort of candid, off the cuff, we struck Iran for Israel. That is huge. The criticism of Israel among a small number of members of Congress is no longer limited to Democrats, as Rep. Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is considered a strong supporter of President Trump, has recently come out strongly against Israel's campaign in Gaza and become the first Republican in Congress to label it a genocide. Rep. Thomas Massie is also known for his opposition to U.S. aid to Israel and the pro-Israel lobby group AIPAC. Israel, you could understand this very much. Israel was the strongest lobby I've ever seen. They had total control over Congress, and now they don't. I'm a little surprised to see that, Trump said. The president, who was strongly backing Israel's assault in Gaza, said the military campaign is not good for Israel's public image. They may be winning the war, but they're not winning the world of public relations, Trump made similar comments while on the campaign trail last year, both about the Israeli lobby and Israeli's public image. Well, I also found it interesting that no one seemed to bring up the fact that this June 22nd strike, it was further down in the article. It was like Operation something hammer. Well, if you go back and you look at that, it's the same day as Operation Barbarossa, which was the day that the Soviet Union was invaded by the Third Reich. It's when the Hitler's Germany invaded 1941, June 22nd. And I thought that was interesting. They picked that day. There was a lot leading up to that. Of course, you had people forgotten already because of the Epstein situation, but remember the president tweeting out, unconditional surrender in all caps and telling the people of Tehran to evacuate. If you don't think that that has reverberating consequences geopolitically, and just like this recent move where you have Xi Jinping, you have Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un, and they're walking and, meeting, having a summit, basically setting up further relations and contacts and plans and other things. And Trump's tweeting out things like, tell Vladimir Putin I said hello while you conspire against the United States. Well, that may be just a public relations photo op deal, but this has been happening behind the scenes for a long time now. And we just continue to drive wedges. These are not the geopolitical situations we've had in the past. These are new things where we're continuing to isolate. That was always the thing when I was growing up. The reason you weren't supposed to be able to support somebody like Pat Buchanan. He was supposedly isolationist. And I thought, what is that? When I was 16 years old in 1996, when he was running for president for the second time. And I followed that very closely. He's like, oh, he's an isolationist. And I thought, what does that mean? Oh, that means, he would want the United States to stand alone and all these other things. Oh, actually, it wasn't that. He was for peace. He wanted economic inroads. He wanted to have manufacturing brought back. He didn't want all these tripwires all over the world, known as treaties, to bring us into no-win wars. He wanted to scuttle the old Cold War alliances that were no longer serving us since the Soviet Union had collapsed into 16 pieces. There was a lot of things that were very smart about what he was doing. This and what we're doing, and even the rhetoric that we bombed Iran for Israel, that's isolationist, folks. That's isolationism, and we've not been this isolated in living memory. I don't know ever. We've definitely boxed ourselves in to, you talk about financially with use of the dollar and de-dollarization. I will give you some other metrics. I was doing some research this morning. We just crossed the Rubicon for the first time, I think, since Bretton Woods in 1944. There's more gold holdings by central banks and foreign treasuries than there are U.S. treasuries. So, the euro was supplanted. It used to be reserve assets held by central banks. It was the dollar, and then the euro, and then gold was like 7. And then they reset that to make gold a tier 1 asset instead of a tier 3 asset back in 2021. And it skipped up and it surpassed the euro. Well, this is another one of those de-dollarization metrics. And you need to pay attention. If you want to know why the price of gold is at almost $3,600 an ounce, and you have Goldman Sachs calling for $5,000 an ounce gold, and Bank of America and their intel saying $4,000 a month an ounce gold. Well, it's because of de-dollarization. And a lot of that's not, these analysts will talk about usage and other things, and usage is up, but it's also, and gold is plentiful in many respects. It's hoarded by central banks, and it's even throughout history, very much of gold is still around. If you go back, and I was talking to Alan Herrera about this in his history of gold, and I didn't know this, but there was 100,000 tons of gold mined perceivably between all of recorded history in 1990. And after the collapse of the Soviet Union and up until our time now, we have mined the same amount of gold. So there's about 200,000 tons that have been mined in all of recorded history, but we've done 100,000. So it took us from all of recorded history to 1990. Now, why do you think that is? And that's an interesting, I've been pondering that since we had that, Alan and I had that conversation. And a lot of that's due to the, what are you going to call it? The inflammation, the pressure applied to markets and other things by fiat currency. It makes, it creates all sorts of uncertainty. It creates illusions as well. It creates things that aren't real on a massive scale. And so the pursuit of gold and things and commodities that would be able to house and be a safe haven away from the volatility of fiat currency, and where eventually it will lead. I mean, if you're running enough simulations, you have to know that the fiat currency system collapses. There is no escape. Yeah, you can always, it can morph into something else, but on a long enough trajectory, just like Zero Hedge says, on a long enough timeline, the survival rate for everyone drops to zero. It's a quote right here on Zero Hedge, and that's from Fight Club. But that's true. So we're awash in that. Right? We have there's gold out there, and it's being gobbled up because the problem of the debt, the crisis of all that's been amassed, and everything that is surrounding our current reality when it's financially is hollow, and it's coming apart. And that's why you're starting just to this is the very tip of the iceberg for that. And I think that, believe it or not, the reason I brought this article up with bombing Iran for Israel is this is a high watermark. This is something to pay attention to. The reason that the Israeli lobby doesn't have the same pull that it used to is because demographically, intellectually, America has changed. And because of the internet, because of things that have failed, because of that, the consequences of neoconservatism and the war in Iraq and failed policies and the fact that politics looks like a dead end road. I mean, it certainly is for most things. And whatever perceived notions you had of who had the influence, that's waning. And that will go along with what's happening with our dollar. These things coalesce together. You understand? Like geopolitically, the interlinkage there is very real. And what kind of power that the United States can project versus what's happening with the currency, those things go together. So watch that very closely. All right. We'll get back to some more financial news here towards the end. I have an article up on Activist Posts by Michael Snyder that I wanted to talk to you about. But first, I'll go to the chat and we'll check in on everybody. I'm still up on at Tony Arterburn on YouTube, at least for now. And we are Skunk Hollow Rose Gardens. Oh, thank you. Thanks for being. Welcome back, Tony. Says Freethinker 59. Good to see you too. And I've got Jody Leslie over there. Harps is in the chat on YouTube. Thanks for joining. I'm over on Rumble as well. Knights of the Storm, Dustin Helm. Lots of good folks over there. I see. Brandon Bennett. Thanks for being there, and Harps over on the Rumble stream. Anything you guys want to talk about, you always put it in the chat. If I get back in time to look at it, I definitely will do that. We got a lot of changes coming to the show too. I appreciate you guys sticking around. I want to get back to. I definitely don't take many commercial breaks. I don't plug enough either. But it's good to be back. I wanted to get a live stream out, even though like I feel like I'm being stabbed in the back by a screwdriver. It's so much fun. All right. Did you guys see? I want to bring this up. And it didn't get enough play. And I'm going to leave it up for your interpretation. But you want to talk about parapolitics, precious metals, things that are strange. This is what the show's designed for, folks. It's for you to we'll gather together. You're my support group. I'm going out live on WWCR. We're broadcasting all over the globe. And I bring up these kind of stories. This is stuff that sticks in my mind. And I remember to talk with you all about it. I don't have a conclusion per se, but I find it interesting. And you talk about these other world leaders, what's happening in the realm of geopolitics and the shift here, but this is something a little different. This is Fox News. That's the only link that I wanted to click after today. I'm not sure what was attacking my broadcast this morning, but medical expert weighs in after Xi Jinping, Putin caught on a hot mic discussing organ transplants and immortality. Now, I leave this up for the possibility that because I don't speak Russian, I would like to, and I don't speak Mandarin Chinese, I would like to. I don't speak these languages, so you could easily tell me that this is what's being said. However, it seems to be somewhat confirmed that they were discussing this, but Russian President Vladimir Putin and Chinese leader Xi Jinping, Beijing hot mic remarks suggesting organ transplant could help people live to 150. And by the way, whatever they were discussing has been dismissed as unfounded by a top U.S. transplant specialist. I don't think that's really what they were discussing. I don't think in traditional transplants are what they're talking about. After Reuters captured the two leaders' bizarre exchange on Wednesday, transplant surgeon James Markman told Fox News Digital that Putin and Xi should be talking about ethics and organ access instead. I don't think that the head of the Communist Chinese or the head of the Russian Federation are much into ethics. And that's another thing, and I think we've gotten so schizophrenic in alternative media because obviously the line that you're supposed to grab onto with the narrative of the globalist and everything coming out of the mainstream media is that Russia is bad and we have to have this enemy and we got to plant the rainbow flag in Moscow and we're going to fight to the last Ukrainian and all that. That's a sick philosophy, and I've stuck up for what's happened to Russia post fall of the Soviet Union on this broadcast many, many, many times because I know the history. I didn't go to a fancy school, I wasn't I don't have to read foreign affairs. I just understand history and what happened post Gorbachev, James Baker and the summits that they had and what happened to NATO. So I don't have to be a Russophile to understand that they have a grievance here. However, a lot of alternative media and some on the faux right or whatever you want to call it, alt-right, fault right, whatever it is, they believe that Putin's like this savior figure, and I've never bought that. I just thought, well, these are people that have ascended to the highest levels of power. There are no good guys. There's only us, and so I would caution against that's the human mind has a real tendency to do. That's why we do this, and we have team sports, and politics is the ultimate team sport, and we. If we are going to cheerlead for so-and-so, then that person can do no wrong. And then, the other person can do no right and all that stuff. It's a very distorted way of looking at things. However, this is an interesting exchange. And I'm going to go, let's see. I love when the websites reset themselves. The chat in question unfolded as Putin and Xi walked alongside North Korea's Kim Jong-un. And that's That's a Pride Alliance draw, too. At a military parade to mark the 80th anniversary of the end of the Second World War in the Chinese capital. As they moved towards the stage to watch the spectacle in Tiananmen Square, Putin's interpreter, I'm sorry, they reset Putin's interpreter could be heard saying in Chinese, biotechnology is continuously developing. Putin's interpreter explained the Russian president's view that human organs can be continuously transplanted and added the longer you live, the younger you become, and you can even achieve immortality. It's not really a Christian perspective, is it? Does that sound very Orthodox Christian to you? Z, who was off camera at the time, can be heard saying in Chinese, some predict that in this century, humans may live to 150 years old. However, Dr. Markman, president of the American Society of Transplant Surgeons Executive Council, claims Xi's conclusions lack evidence. I don't think, Mr. Markman, doctor, I don't think that's the kind of transplants that you're thinking of. It reminded me of the story, little known history, that Stalin, the man of steel, who ran the Soviet Union, Stalin, prior to World War II, and this was one of those eras of Soviet history that got swept under the rug, but he created, and they were successful. That was the thing about this experiment. He wanted to create a gorilla human hybrid. And they had as willing participant, this woman, they had, and they went through all the machinations and continuously tried to create this hybrid. And from what I understand from the history, and you can go look this up for yourself, it's a bizarre history. Apparently, he was trying to create a super soldier, and they were going to use human and gorilla DNA once they could get. And supposedly, they were successful with at least one, and it died. But later, Franklin Roosevelt would come to Stalin's aid, and the State Department was. This kind of goes back to my history about Operation Barbarossa, June 22nd, 1941. This was when the Soviet Union was invaded by the Third Reich, and that's when our State Department in the United States, hey, we got to get in this war. It wasn't so much that England was supposedly under attack, or the Battle of Britain, or Dunkirk, or any of that. That wasn't what set off the alarm bells in the State Department. It was the invasion of the Soviet Union by the Third Reich. And FDR would go on to, that's the whole reason we went in the war, because Hitler invaded Poland, and then we gave Poland to Stalin at the end of the 50 million dead to give Poland from, take it from the Third Reich and give it to the Soviet Empire. And so we gave it to Stalin, and later Harry Truman would call him Uncle Joe. And, we were taught to like them. But again, this is on the world stage. You got to look at this from a lens of actually, some realpolitik and some not team sports or anything like that. Again, you have Putin, who I think got a really raw deal we should have financial inroads. We should have made peace. We should have summits with Russia. We should be doing things right now to promote peace and economic prosperity between our nations, and especially with the growing influence of the Chinese. But we didn't do that. We went and we completely isolated ourselves. Kenny F. in Power says, hi, Tony, and Beans the Brave. Well, she certainly is brave. And she's just off to my right. She's napping. but I'm glad to have her here. So just a little interesting story. You take with a grain of salt or whatever you'd like, but that's an interesting blip. The that bodies exhibit, supposedly, and you talk about organ harvesting, that I brought this up on America Unplugged. You see that bodies exhibit that travels all over, and it emanates from China, and supposedly a lot of the bodies are Chinese dissidents, people that were no longer viable. They were unalived by the ruling party. But I think they're talking about something else here, not like your traditional, I think growing things and creating, cloning things and all of that. So something that should have been talked about more. That's what we do here on the Arterburn radio transmission. I'll bring up stuff that maybe you should think about a little bit more. You draw your own conclusions on what they were actually talking about. I have my own ideas, but none of it's provable. All right. Well, we got about 24 minutes left in the broadcast. Speaking of broadcasts, okay. Hold on. I figure since there's been a change, I'll discuss with you, dear audience, my beloved followers of Arterburn radio transmission and Paratruther. Let's discuss a little something interesting. All right, let me put this up on the screen. Let's see. He's dead to me. It's so funny. I get all these pop-ups. It's hard to read through. He's dead to me. Alex Jones calls former InfoWars co-host demon possessed. MAGA conspiracy theorist. This is the MAGA conspiracy theorist is an interesting nomenclature. I'd not run across that before. And InfoWars founder Alex Jones had a meltdown on air as he went on a tirade against his former co-host for quitting the show. Jones, 51, blasted far right presenter Owen Schroyer, 36, on his Tuesday live stream after Schroyer shared why he left InfoWars on his Rumble. Schroyer cited Jones calling him too anti-Trump among the reasons for his departure. Jones says, "You are a snake," as he yelled aggressively, pointed his fingers towards the camera. "You are a rat. You are a fraud. You are a backstabber. You are a hand biter. You are a disgrace." Jones continued to bash the ex-host. I don't know if the stuff he's smoking, but I've seen a lot of people get paranoid. They smoke pot and go nuts. Jones also claimed that Schroyer would look at him with hatred and asserted his bad behavior was because Schroyer wanted to be fired by Jones so he could be a victim. "He's going to stab me in the back," Jones said. I'm not here to be stabbed in the back. Okay. Well, I'm sure anybody in alternative media, if you follow this a little bit, you probably heard this story. But I wanted to tell you where I love Owen. And I've been friends with Owen for many years. I like that he's a far right presenter. He's so far right. That's the funny thing about this country, that and where we are, like with the narrative, like just constitutionally, like you are an extremist. Owen's not a far right guy at all. That's so funny. But it is true that he's been fired or let go, and it seems like that was an inevitability. He lasted a long time. I would say, from what I've seen, and I used to fill in for Owen on InfoWars, and I'd filled in for David. They've both now been, David was let go in December of 2020. And then the last time I filled in for Owen, was February of 21. It's the last appearance I ever made on InfoWars. It was February of 21. I was remoted in. He has a 3-hour show. I had Don Jeffries coming on. I had 2 other guests. I'd already booked the show. I was live streaming from my office in Branson. So plugged in, opened up, did the first 30 minutes or so of the war room. And then this voice comes on in my headset and it just says, hey, Tony, Alex is going to take it from here. And I said, he was on a vacation. He was in like a hotel. He just didn't want to see me broadcast. So that's the last time I was just told to get off. And I did. And it's his network. He can do what he likes. And because, I'm friends with Owen, I never even told that story. I just said, fine, and it was just the way that it was. But I thought that's one hell of a way to end I just used to fill in over there. But I'd gotten, and I think because I sided with David a lot too, I never brought that up, but I just the analysis. I mean, I thought the analysis of going into, into 2020, 21, it was just, I was trying to call it like I was seeing it. I was right. But it's a thankless task. I remember the comments, people just really mad at me for not being more of a Trump sycophant. And I knew right then that was going to be a massive liability in the future. It would be good right then, but in the future, like the further you can get away from whatever the hell that was, like the stop the steal and everything else, the further you get away from that, the better off you'd be in the long run. But it's going to be a lot of short-term wilderness time because people want to hear what they want to hear. And it doesn't matter if you're right. I could tell, like I've been telling you to buy gold since it's $1,100 an ounce. Nobody's calling me, thanking me, saying, hey, you did a great job. No, they're just now well, maybe I should buy gold. Maybe you should. Maybe that de-dollarization deal is real, or that the nationalistic political movement was hijacked and is a clone or something. It's a funhouse mirror version of itself. And I didn't believe in it. And people say, well, you gave up. No, I'm calling it like I see it. And Schroyer called it like he saw it. And that's where he's going to start a whole new thing. And good for him. And I've never complained about, I'm thankful for all the broadcasts I got to do on InfoWars, and I appreciate those guys. It's Alex's station. He can do whatever he wants. But I thought that was, from what I had seen, just in behind the scenes and hanging out with Owen and, filling in for him and his crew and everything I saw, there is not a soldier that you would want more than Owen Schroyer. Like, you talk about a loyal guy. Like, he's so loyal. So it's all really sad to watch when these kind of things happen, and a lot of the pressure emanates from outside. But it is the truth is that Owen is very, very loyal, and having that sort of somebody in your corner like Owen Schroyer, that's a tough thing to lose. So and again, there's stuff that you'll never hear me talk negatively about anybody over at Info. They can do what they want. InfoWars I appreciate the time that I was able to go host over there, but that really did happen. I think a lot of other broadcasters would have been like, lost their mind or, been venomous or had some antagonism. I never had any of those things. I just thought it was very strange. And I thought they lost a lot of good commentary from me, because if you go back to, we were just getting started in 21 with what was about to happen. You had shortly following, geopolitically, that was Basel III, and gold became a tier 1 asset, and then the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, all this stuff that the ruble fell, and then it was they reset it with gold, and it went back to its original basis, and the dollar usage from worldwide fell to like 10%. And continues to fall. I could have covered a lot there, but Godspeed to Owen Schroyer. I'm sure he'll do fine. I got a call with him. As a matter of fact, we texted me yesterday. I'm going to talk to him we'll see what I'm going to do some stuff with Owen for sure. I love Owen. So hopefully I'm a proud sponsor of his program, wherever he goes and wherever he winds up. So we're supposed to talk after the show today. Maybe we'll have him on. Maybe we'll do another. He was the episode 1 of Paratruther, by the way. Kenny F. in Power says, great run in gold and silver recently. Stacked since 2010. Well, good for you, Kenny. I know that Kenny F. in Powers. I love Kenny Powers. Harps says, Alex is the Christine Home Broadcasting. He's definitely carved out his own niche, his own thing. I love, I think pre-2016 InfoWars, great stuff. I mean, back when you had Jim Mars on and it was the left-right paradigm and Alciaida and all that. I like that. That was good. The poison of politics, especially the Trump brand and everything that brought, it's just been disastrous for alternative media. It's been disastrous for everything. And it's sad because it carries with it a nugget of I wonder, a selection of truths and things that would be great for this country. And it's been unfortunately put into this phantom zone. We've been dispatched to this weird place where it's being used against itself, if that makes sense. All right. Let's jump into the last little bit of stories for today. Let's see what I've got here. I had several things pulled up. I wanted to see there was something about housing. It was activist post. Let's talk about this. The reason I bring this up, if you want to get the most out of an hour, okay, so this show is basically an hour. It's hour live. If you take 2 or 3 things out of it, there's something in there, right? And it's either about trends or what comes next or something to think about when you're either economically or politically or socially. There's something in it. Art will usually do that. And it's something I saw a comment the other day. It was like, I like Tony's show, but he makes me want to fall asleep. I'm like, it's because I'm not yelling at you. I'm not going to yell at you. This is a conversation. Imagine you called me and I just happen to be enunciating a little bit better. And I'm going to watch my words a little bit more carefully. You're not going to be talking to the former paratrooper all the time. You're going to be talking to me. This is a family show. But you'll learn something. And this is one of those things, activist post. By the way, go and subscribe to my friend Charlie Robinson's activist post. What a great website. He's always got stories that I can use for the show and things you can use for, this is intel, folks. We are gathering intelligence. This is open source intel. It's what this show's about. And it's analysis based on what's happening now and what happens next. Home prices are starting to crash. Is that really good news or really bad news? This is Activist Post via Michael Schneider of the Economic Collapse blog. Home prices are falling all over the nation. Should we be cheering or should we be concerned? In this article, I am going to discuss 2 distinct scenarios. In one scenario, lower housing prices could be a really good thing for our economy. But if in another scenario plays out, we could potentially be looking at a repeat of the chaotic days of 2008 and 2009. Zero Hedge is reporting that home prices in the 20 biggest cities in the United States declined for a 4th consecutive month in June. Home prices in America's 20 largest cities fell for the 4th straight month in June, the latest data available from S&P Core Logistics case revealed. The 0.25% drop was larger than expected and dragged the year-over-year price growth down to 2.15%, the weakest since July of 2023. 4 months in a row is definitely a trend, and other data points are confirming that a significant turning point has arrived, According to Zillow, 27.4% of all home listings had their prices slashed during the month of July. Home prices are falling in half of the nation's largest markets, a new report reveals, sparking fears that a housing crisis is looming. Well, I'm going to go back to what I talked with before the robot got mad at me on the David Knight show. Tried to hijack my show. We were discussing this very thing. And it has to do with the metrics, and it's hiding something. The housing market is showing you something. And what it's showing you is the failure of fiat currency. And now it's reached a point where the housing and real estate, especially single family homes, have housed, for lack of a better term, it's housed the declining purchasing power of dollars rapidly since 1971. That's why home prices have started to outpace everything else. And so the whole economy is built on that. And instead of us making things and being a lender, we become a debtor and we start consuming. We stop making things, we import them for cheaper prices. People get laid off, all this stuff, all the metrics of what happens in a fiat post-manufacturing world for the United States. So we put it all into housing. And wealthy people will go out and buy multiple houses, not even to rent out, just to own. And it makes it where, the average person is priced out. It used to be is about 30 years old was the average home buying age. Now it's 40. So there's an entire generation of people that have been priced out of the home market. And eventually, real estate is what somebody will pay for it. It's kind of like a rare coin. You can come to me with a rare coin. I love them. They're neat. And you can say, I clicked on an app and it shows me it's worth X. And I'm like, that's true if you can find somebody to buy it. Gold and silver are liquid all the time. I know exactly where I can take it. I know I can get within hours, I can be liquid back into fiat currency. It's a monetary metal. It's easy. Real estate's not necessarily like that. And it's a lot of subjective things, like what's it really worth? We know what an ounce of gold worth. We know what a Bitcoin's worth. We know what an ounce of silver's worth, but real estate's different. And it can have different pockets of pricing that has been, maybe it's a hot area, whatever, and people get into it. They borrow against it. Every time you get a home loan, it's currency creation. When you borrow from the mortgage company, from your bank, they don't pull from some reserve somewhere. That is currency that is made. That's new currency. So we've built this house of cards on the housing market. This is the entire backbone of what the U.S. economy is. And that's why if people can't buy the house, let's say interest rates are too high for them or whatever, because when the interest rates rise, the payments rise. And so if people get priced out, then they can't keep up the Ponzi because it has to continue. Well, that's why they want to lower rates. And they cut rates, then you can borrow more with, you can have a lower payment with more and capitalize it more. The problem with that too is that it creates all this liquidity and then the dollar loses purchasing power. So if you're a gold, silver, Bitcoin person, that looks good for you. If you're a real estate investor, long-term, if you own rentals and stuff like that can be really good. And the tax implications are magnificent. However, we just reached a really interesting point here in American history where this has been built in and propped up. And because we didn't allow markets to correct themselves naturally in 2008, 2009, because we had to bail out, the too big to fail in jail, because those numbers seem quaint now. In 2008, I think the debt of the U.S. was around, $7 trillion in 2008. And we'll have to look that up. Maybe I'll look it up now. Let's see if I can look up the debt of the U.S. in 2008 real quick before the transmission. 2008. Let's see if we can go back and look. So it's 9 trillion. Okay. It's 9 trillion. So it was 5 trillion in 2000. So it was 9 trillion. And so all these numbers are quaint compared to that, because it took us from 1776 to 2008 to go, 8 or 9 trillion. And now we add a trillion every 100 days. Okay. So these numbers and these metrics, aren't going to play out well, especially with things like the housing market. Florida and Texas in particular are home to former boom towns where prices have fallen at the quickest rate over the past year. Tampa prices are down 6.2%, Austin 6%, Miami 4.6%, Orlando 4.3%, and Dallas 3.9%, according to Zillow. If you want a canary in the coal mine, this is it. Now, we don't have time to go through the entire article, but what I will add is that the upside to this, if it's allowed to go on its natural conclusion, prices will fall. And it allows people to get into the housing market, which can be a good thing. The problem is that all of this, I think the traditional way to outpace inflation and own a home and all that, I think that those things are antiquated. And that real estate can be a great play, but there's going to be a reversal of those trends, if you want to call it that. And this is just me giving you a little bit of advice to look to. The housing market and what we think of as traditional, home as an asset, all of that stuff, I think will be a lot different in 5 to 10 years, especially 10 years. 10 years, we'll see a completely different system. All this is built on something very shaky, which is, you get out so the next person can get in, prices rise, but it's going up too fast because it's a failure of currency. And it's not necessarily that the house is worth more. It's kind of like the gold, right? Now, some real estate is, because they don't make anymore, right? They don't, especially in areas where the population is boomed. So there's a supply and demand issue that drives price, but it's mostly because of the failure of currency. Kenny F. in Power says they lower rates and make more money, then hyperinflation will be the final nail in the coffin. Yes. Well, I appreciate each and every one of you. It's good to be back. I got some good shows planned for the coming weeks and months, and I hope you'll stick around. Be sure and give us a review over anywhere podcasts are found. If you find us over on Apple and you like the show for Paratruther, give us a review. Same thing with Arterburn Radio Transmission. I've got some great stuff planned for the show, and I want to bring that to you and have these conversations. It means a lot to me to be live, and we're going to have some guests on and some other things happening with Paratruther. So yeah, give us a review if you can. And if you haven't looked at Wolfpack, please do. Wolfpack.gold. I'm really working on some new stuff there. Wolfpack.gold is it's just a great way to stack. It's a great way to dollar cost average precious metals. And we're just getting started. Silver is over $40 an ounce. I think that's an indication of things to come, and the repricing, the revaluation of all commodities against fiat currency. There's a lot of change happening right now, folks, and I'm glad to be here with you throughout the change. So yeah, Arterburn.gold, Wolfpack.gold, America Unplugged on Saturdays. Be sure and tune in. I'll be here along with Billy Ray Valentine and the legendary Donald Jeffries. You guys take care of each other. Have a great weekend. End of trend.